Welcome to the Honest Wargamer. I'm your Rob. Yeah, I'm your Rob, and I'm joined by three gentlemen today for a Darren List Diary show. Obviously, first and foremost, JP's here. No, Darren. Hello, Darren. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well. Freddie's joined me on the sofa. If you want to see, I'm not sure anyone's seen Freddie before. Can you see him there?
Oh,
there he is.
Freddie.
Hello, Freddie. So I'm excited that he's got the confidence to show his little face. Alex got up this morning and made baked oats for breakfast because I'm 14 stone and 3 pounds, which is the heaviest I've been in my entire life. Thank you, lockdown. So I've been banned from eating bread, and Alex has taken it upon herself to make me 3 square meals a day. I'm not eating past 8 o'clock, and I am miserable. But hopefully in a month or two, I'll no longer be 14 stone, right? Not that there's anything wrong with being 14 stone, but it's
I haven't been 14 stone since I was 14.
Yeah, but you're a bigger chap than me, aren't you? And you're I've met you. You're a giant, so you should be 14 stone. But I'm not. I'm a slight chap with a little head. I shouldn't be. So aside from being the fattest I've ever been, I'm very well.
Oh, well, great. Joe PLC, thank you for resubscribing, by the way. JP's on the show as well. JP, how you doing? I'm surprised that you are not now, at this stage, just a human-looking calculator.
Yeah, well, I mean, at some point, eventually, I'll be able to synthesize the whole video and voice chats, which will be, useful for, obviously, things like this and also for work, etc. I'm doing good. I've been a little off the AL stuff while there haven't been as many events, obviously. But yeah, doing good and just starting to scrape all the TTS tournaments and stuff like that and get some new data out and stuff like that. And then obviously going to talk about some Daughters of Khaine from my perspective and Lisbon's perspective. So yeah.
You mean the data?
Perfect. I think actually one of the interesting things I read actually just this morning that America is being warned that if it doesn't understand the war that is coming through AI, it'll be wholly unprepared for it, which I thought was fascinating. JP, how long until I no longer have to play games and in fact I can get a robot butler to do it for me? That's my question.
Honestly, hopefully not that long. You just send your cash to Games Workshop, they put into a big AI, and then you just get your wins back,
Perfect.
Yeah.
You don't even need to paint. That's flawless.
No,
That's all I've ever wanted.
I've bought 4 GW shares. Does that count?
Nice.
Yeah, well, you're a shareholder now, Darren.
Yeah, I own them, don't I?
Yeah, you
So
do.
conflict of interest now officially declared. Thanks, Darren.
And Gary, nice to have you on the show. How have you been?
Oh, I've been good. Yeah, not doing much, obviously, for the past year, obviously, but trying to keep up to speed with everything on the TTS and your show and all that lot. But I've been painting like a demon, though, so
Nice.
So my hobby has gone up, but my competitiveness has kind of waned somewhat.
Well, if anything, I've got some good news for you. There is actually a painting meta. You might not be aware of it, but pretty much the most predominant sort of thing going on in Age of Sigmar right now. So you prep for that, right? Yeah.
I've done a Deepkin army. I'm doing a Dock army. I'm doing all the elves at the moment, basically. Now I've got the time to paint them, rather than a weekend before an event.
I'm not doing any painting. I've got all this time to paint, and I've not done any. That's terrible, isn't it?
It's not terrible. It's not terrible. Listen, if you in any way you feel like you're forced to do any work at all, that's just how you were raised in an awful society that puts pressure to be productive. You don't have to, and in fact, just enjoy yourself, Darren.
Recharge
today,
time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're not a productive member of society. You're just a member of society. You don't have to be productive. So today we're here to talk about Daughters of Khaine. Each one of you has written a list. Listbot has created some numbers. I don't really have to do much, which is freaking sweet. So I'm going to do some painting. So Darren, kick us off. You're leading the show now. Congrats. What's going on?
I was going to let someone that was on the show. That's tradition, but yeah, I can go first. It's probably best I go first, actually, because I'll make a ton of mistakes. I'm not too familiar with Daughters of Khaine. I'm sure chat will keep me regular, won't they? And JP and hopefully Gary will as well. We're going to start with I'm going to get it up on my screen as well. So, Stodgnar. So, Daughters of Khaine are, despite being naked ladies, they're hard as fuck, aren't they? Not just for eating you up, but for taking a punch as well, which is wonderful. But Hagnar are the choice, aren't they? If you don't like taking your own miniatures off the table, so I think if you're someone that gets upset by losing your key pieces, etc., Hagnar is probably a good idea for you. And then I've tried to, in this list, explore the additional ways of making them stodgy or tough, tougher than they were before. I think you could probably do a lot of the things that are added in here, but we've not really seen them. But there's a couple of new ally choices, I think. One new ally choice that really sorts of helps them out as well. So I'll go through this list. This is a list for people that don't like other people.
Are you going to add our caveat we were talking about, which is, yes, we could add Marathi because Marathi is good, but we're going to try and do it without.
Oh, that's a good point. None of us have got Marathi.
Yeah, it's just like, Marathi's really good, but we don't want to make 3 1,400-point lists.
No, not at all. She, and I imagine as well, there'll be a lot of content centered around her, and there'll be a lot of other people sort of discussing Marathi, and this show's about it's meant to be about, not always. Sometimes I just spam shit, don't I? Because I've run out of ideas. But it's meant to be alternative approaches to the game. So we've got a Slaughter Queen on a Cauldron of Blood, and she's got the word I can't pronounce, prayer. The artifact I can't pronounce, rather, that goes with Hagnar. And I think that makes her a bit more fighty. Then we've got a Bloodwhack Shrine, who's a general, with devoted disciples, which is again the Hagnar malarkey you have to take. And they're from Shimon, and she's got the perfect protection. It is now my new Ether Quartz brooch. I really like this artifact. And she's got Mind Razor, because no Daughters of Khaine army wants to go to war without Mind Razor, right? And then another name I can't pronounce, the Bloodied, with the Crimson Rejuvenation. So it's Morgweth, is that right? Morgweth,
yeah.
She's 80 points. Wonderful.
Yeah.
80 points. In terms of value, she's probably one of the best pound for pound characters in the game. She comes with a free fucking unit for a start as well, doesn't she?
I thought this was a typo, but then the Luminath stuff's been shown, hasn't it? And the Luminath stuff's 110 for the whole lot.
So is she cheaper than a normal Hag Queen because she doesn't get access to... She can't take an artifact or anything like that? I presume that's why she's 10 points cheaper.
Maybe,
but it comes with the unit.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she comes with the unit. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of these I don't even know what the name for them is, but like the single character who comes with a little unit.
Warcry units?
Well, we do. It's sort of, they're the Warcry units, and then there are also these heroes that come with a little like block of friends. We haven't seen those. And I think it's cool. Like maybe the points just keep coming down, and now we can see them like slotting into a list like this. Because as you say, it's cheaper than a Hag Queen, plus you get the free unit.
We're definitely going to see her in Daughters of Khaine lists, I think. At 80 points, that's wonderful. 30 Sisters of Slaughter with barded whips and bayed bucklers. 10 Sisters of Slaughter with the same. 20 Witch Elves with sacrificial knives and bayed bucklers. And then the 4 Blade Coven that go with Wassabollocks. 2 5 units of Life Takers. And then we've got some ally slots. We've got the Shark with the net that stops you piling in. And then we've got the Frostheart Phoenix from Cities of Sigmar. And then the Slaughter Troop. And then Heart of Fury, which is the endless spell that turns you into Fire Slayers. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, the Heart of Fury, that's it. So
you've even got 10 points less for a cheeky, I might get reroll saves triumph.
Comes in at 1990, yeah, you're absolutely right. Hopefully you might, if anyone's used all their points, probably a slash art, if you come up against a Slanesh army, they've used all their points.
Hopefully they eventually delete the triumphs, because obviously it's a ridiculous mechanic where just for being 20 points cheaper, you could get a buff that you would pay hundreds of points for. Seems ludicrous. Yeah, doesn't make any sense why anyone uses it in match play. and if anything, makes it obvious that we're all narrative gamers, truthfully. So just always, I'm going to bring that up whenever anyone mentions triumphs. I'll only do that today.
Triumph points allow you to do like 90% of your list building. You're like, do I want to be... You get to 2,000, and you're like, but really I'd rather be 1990. So you're spending those hundreds of points in rearranging your list 50 times to try and get 10 points, and then just play against 5 people who are 1980.
Yeah, livid. Lots of anger.
The stats.
Lots of anger.
They worked out like 10 points under, you get the triumph like half the time, and if you're 20 points under, you get it like, well, no, not quite. It's something.
I think it's 1960 gets you is what they were saying gets you there like 80% of the time.
Yeah, it's like there is a distinct difference between 10 points under and 20 points.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too complicated for me. I never think about it. It's a happy accident.
I think that is actually a big thing about the triumphs is you're like, instead of being like, I want to rearrange my list to hit exactly 2,000, when you do hit that 1970, you're like, and I could get a game-winning reroll saves on my...
It's the Bob Ross of list building, isn't it? It's a happy little accident. Yeah, cool.
None of it's okay, but that's fine if you guys want to carry on. Like I don't understand. As someone who ran 12 could I, when someone's like, I'm like, cool, I've got reroll wounds now. People are like, this seems unfair. And I'm like, it is categorically unfair. Like, it's ridiculous.
Well, they always had the option. Like, you just need to start an arms race till people are bringing 1,400 point lists just to guarantee that triumph. Right. You know?
Yeah, every 100 points you beat your opponent by, you get an additional triumph on top. That's fine. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, Darren. Important that it's in there at least, of course. Great conversation. How does the list work?
Well, it just doesn't fucking die, does it? So you've got all the normal Hagnar bullshit of you re-roll your 5. So your Hagnar, so first of all, if you're near your general, I don't know if it's 7 inches or 14 or wholly within or whatever, but you're near your general, it turns your after damage save from a 6 to a 5, doesn't it? Obviously, you've got a prayer
fanatical faith roll.
Yeah. So, and then you've obviously got a prayer where you can re-roll that, can't you? So that's just glorious. So that already pisses off 80% of your opponents, doesn't it? Now, behind that unit, we can fly our Phoenix, and that's a -1 to wound bubble. A -1 to wound debuff is fucking cracking, isn't it? It's one of the best debuffs in the game. Is it JP? Is it right that it's better than mine? If you had a choice to make a unit -1 to hit or -1 to wound, what would you make them?
It doesn't normally. It depends. It doesn't actually technically. There's no difference between hit rolls and wound rolls. Like, you can swap them around, and they're sort of the same. But there are a lot of ways to get pluses to hit and rerolls to hit. Obviously, there's just also the command ability, right? The generic command ability is reroll 1s, and everybody has that. And so when you get, like, a classic example is OBR, right, where you got Mortek Guard on 2s to hit, and sometimes 1s to hit, but 4s to wound. So if you can, obviously the difference between taking them from 1s to hit to 2s to hit is 0%, but taking them from 4s to wound to 5s to wound is big. So it's mainly that people don't have a lot of access to ways to re-roll those wounds, or, I mean, obviously daughters do, but to re-roll those wounds.
Also, Sanesh, get within 12 inches, Shard Speaker's going to smash your shit in.
And then die. Very good. Shit. So, yeah, and also the Blood Rat Reducer herself has got Enfeebling Foe, hasn't she? Which is another -4 to wound, so you can get -2 to wound off.
Yeah, which is big.
List, which is quite nice. And then I've gone for the Shimon item, because -1 to it ignores -1 to wound, doesn't it? And there's a lot of shooting out there.
Ren.
Right, yeah, -1 to Ren. Sorry. If you in the mirror, if you're up against those horrible blood snakes, for example, they're Rend 1, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of shooting is Rend 1, yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of your general. That's obviously the linchpin of your army. You want to keep alive as much as possible. You don't have to put that on there. The other popular ones are the +1 to cast. I think it's like 7-fold something, or or perhaps an item that allows you to get a prayer off more consistently. But I think there are sometimes games where you always roll 4 pluses. You know, you get all your prayers off. Some games that happens, whereas I think the ignoring -1 Rend will be good and useful in every game.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes you're up against people that are so good at shutting down magic in this meta, like Seraphon and Teclis, etc., that having that +1 to cast doesn't really do a lot in this grand scheme of things. Whereas
I think that's very true.
ignoring a point of rend on those wardens, certainly when they're so stabby,
and KO.
And loads of stuff, right? So I just think that's more relevant in more games. So I just like that, especially on the general and where she's so important. I'm sure lots of people that are regular Daughters of Khaine users might disagree with me. But the point of this list is stodge. We want to add as much stodge into the list as possible. Never.
Is this because of the oats? Is this because of eating the oats?
Well, and I called it stodge. And then the prayer itself, the endless spell itself, that is another bubble of -1 damage, isn't it? So it's all the old Hagnar bullshit of old on steroids.
And the no pile-in, right? You've got the no pile-in as well.
I think if an army can have a shark, it should have a shark.
Yeah,
they're so fucking good. They're so fucking good. They should be. I want to see them in Stormcast lists. They're brilliant.
In some ways, it's almost like Be'lakor, right? In some situations, not being able to pile in is just not being able to do anything with the unit for the whole turn.
Yeah, that's some army's whole game plan.
Yeah.
In the mirror, it's super important as well, because if you come up across sisters, they want that 6-inch always pile in, right? Or to be able to retreat and then pile in again. So you stop those shenanigans. You stop Karengard, doing all their bullshit as well. Well, you don't, not all their bullshit. It's just a nice little counter. If you don't like the Phoenix in the list, you can drop the Phoenix and have 3 sharks, because that takes it up to 12 units. So you can have 3 allies.
Like the list I sent you, wasn't it, when we were talking about what to do for the show? There's like a list where you can take 13 units of harpies and 3 sharks and still get still get like Sisters of Slaughter and character package in there as well.
And the thing with the Hagnar infantry, they're quite slow, so it's nice to have this shark to dart off later on, and the Phoenix as well is pretty swift as well, right?
Well, it's a beam off, isn't it? So it's relevant in some missions.
Exactly. So I mean, and there's a lot more to unpack there with Daughters, but I'm not too familiar with them, truth be told.
Not beam off monster, but yeah.
But I think that's just as stodgy as you can make a list.
Yeah. It is one of those lists I think you look at. When I'm sort of scrolling through it, I'm like, okay, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this. And then you get to the Phoenix at the end and you're like, and a Phoenix?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if you're going up against this, you're like, okay, all right, he's thrown in a shark, so there's that. And then otherwise there's these 3 units to deal with. And then you're like, and a Phoenix? There's going to be debuffing me and it's going to be plus the save. And it's going to be, you've emphasized a lot like that it is stodgy. But... Yeah. It's also Daughters of Khaine, right? It's also going to slap you. When it's not like okay, all right, it's going to be hard to kill these Sisters of Slaughter, but we'll be stuck grinding each other. It's like, nah, I mean those, it's still Doc. They're still going to pump when you get into combat. So the damage is also still there.
And you've still got
the battalion allows you to retreat and charge as well. So you're dictating. It's all about damage mitigation, and where you've got a retreat and charge, even if you're in combat, it's still useful because then you can get yourself into a better position.
Yeah.
And retreat charge is much better when you've got the option of staying in combat and then not piling in for the correct amount of time.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you want to retreat out as soon as possible so before they can bring the numbers in. But this way you can just go, well, as long as I keep getting that 3+, I can stay here and I can bug out when I want to.
Yeah. You can retreat from a big block of combat, charge fully back into it, but leave one sister within 3 inches of another unit that you've shot with the sharks, and you've just like taken that unit out for a turn.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm always looking for 2 sharks to make that kind of quite a reliable 3-up. But
the 3-up's not the most reliable. You probably want multiple sharks if you are going for it. But I like Phoenix in this list, I think.
Yeah. Also, again, like I think it's not like a cheese list where you're relying on them not being able to pile in as the only way you win. You know what I mean? Like you've got these other tanks. So you can, with the 1 shark, you can be like, yeah, I'm looking for that 3+. If I fail it though, I'm still in good shape with these other, with these debuffs and stuff like that.
Lists that give you loads of plays are always really fun. Right? And creating this list as well, I got a bit of help from Benjamin Sava. So I sent over an initial concept with the Phoenix and the Shark. And we had like probably an hour sort of WhatsApp sesh, honing it down. And it's some of the most fun I've had building lists and reading books and seeing what does when Benjamin was sort of explaining sort of the tricks that he would pull. One of them is I initially had 2 lots of Mindraiser in the list because I'm quite big on redundancy.
Yeah.
But Benjamin's rationale was that there's so much that's such a well-known big spell, and there's so much that shuts it down. You don't want to rely on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're better off having different options, and one of them is the mirror dance that allows you to swap sort of two chaps over within 24 inches, I think, two heroes, and it allows you to more consistently get that Bloodwrack Medusa's horde killing ability. Everything within 12 inches takes a mortal wound on a 5+. So you can get guys in, they'll stay alive, then you can swap them over later and blow stuff away. I thought it was quite a nice little.
Yeah, it's a tool rather than a game plan now, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I probably explained that very poorly. If people want a more in-depth approach to that, I'm sure Benjamin will explain it better. But I like that option. I like jank. I like big plays, and that's a nice big play, isn't it? So.
And the thing is, this still has all the usual. It's got 10 sacrificial chaff. It's got 20 chaff if you really need it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a big unit to kind of sit on objectives and outnumber people if you need it. It's got all the tools. I mean, even the Blakeoven can be used as chaff if you really, really need to.
Yeah, you can screen with it.
Or deck chair, literally, like if you're playing Battle for the Past, 2 to the sides, 1 in the front, 1 at the back, you can just leave 4 Blakeoven on the back.
1 at the front, 1 at the back. We were in your bedroom earlier, weren't we, Gary?
But I think that is actually quite a nice thing about that blade cover. I've seen it's one of the things we're seeing in the game right now is there are a lot of these battle plans where you're like, I just need 1 unit that can sit on this objective, and you're like, I don't care what it is, it's not going to fight anything. And some armies don't have it. As we see more invested into these big blocks, you can sit there and be like, well, I control this bit of the board, but I can't leave my block of 30x to sit here. So having just like the Morgweth Blade Coven, you can just be like, I don't care about this, but it can score me points and deny deep strikes and stuff like that. I think it's really good.
Oh no, I love those units. Anything where you
Gobblepalooza does it.
Minimize the value you need to hold your home objectives, which allows you to throw stuff forward.
Yeah.
I'm a massive fan of. Absolutely. Rob, how do you feel about it?
I think JP's point about the objectives obviously is super important at the moment. I would push back on the idea that we're seeing larger blocks. I think actually the game generally is more MSU at the moment because one of the things that's happened, obviously with lockdown, tournaments have been few and far between, and some events are whatever. But I would say probably the best battle plan, in my opinion, GHB 2020, of course, is a Scorched Earth, 8 objectives, stretches your army out. And the reason is because it's counterintuitive to all the other battle plans. So it's a great battle plan to always try a new army out on, and then you go, oh, I'm missing this unit. I'm missing like that extra 5-man, that extra little like 10-man unit that's going to hold this. Just like JP says, doesn't even have to do anything. It's just there. And I think that's actually quite important. There's even like I was speaking to my good friend Joe Pagano the other day, and we were even talking about like Chaos Furies and and things that can nip around and just do those jobs. And I think it's one of the reasons Knights of the Empty Throne lists have been fairly popular, other than like Grasping Plate and rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound, Plague Touched, is that command ability is still a thing. Always asking yourself how an army plays. And then one of the things that I like about the Daughters of Khaine army wholly is that, of course, you're immediately drawn to playing Hagnar because obviously the 5+ DPR save, and of course, just like you've built it, something that's super, super tanky. One of the advantages and disadvantages of this is it's going to play super well into something like Focal Points, where it's like going to be like, cool, I can't wait to dominate the middle. That's all they're going to do, like me on the dance floor. That's what they're going to do, dominate. But in a battle plan where they have to stretch out, like even something like Total Conquest, where the objectives are fairly far apart, it starts to struggle somewhat. Not loads, but a bit. right? And I think that's an advantage and a disadvantage. So that's what I like about the different battle plans that we have. That this gets this is very strong and can get a little bit weaker in some situations, and then depending on where it is.
Good team. Good team.
Yeah, well, also you see in Darren, in Darren's specific list, that there's a nice thing about then having a the Blade Coven, the Shark, and the Phoenix, right? Is that all of those things let you spread a little more than if you just say bumped up your Sisters of Slaughter to 30 and your Witch Elves to 30, and you have these 330 blocks that you want to have all clustered around your general.
Yeah.
So, a slaughter troop, a Frostheart Phoenix is not going to die to your opponent's 5 life takers. The deep strike down and try and take an objective. Your Phoenix can hold its own against that when you're spreading out. So I think this list, again, when you have that Phoenix, you get the benefit when you clump up, and you get a lot of value out of the aura, the -1 to wound debuff. And if you do have to spread out, you can be like, well, this monster can go fight a unit of 5 direwolves or something like that my opponent would that you're otherwise would be totally free if you just had these 3 big blocks.
Yeah, it's not dying to incidental attacks, is it?
No, exactly.
Cool. There's not much more than that, really. It's just stodge as fuck.
Okay. Yeah, very survivable. Like magic dependent. Super cool. Like lots of the things in there. Having a Phoenix, you could do a really cool bloody Phoenix. That would be gross.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be gross. It would be gross.
But sure, you could do it. I'm sure someone's going to do it. And then even then, it's that it comes in at 131 wounds. So you sat on I'd say an average level sort of wound volume in the army. That's very, very tough and very survivable, which is fun. Not quick on the drops, but that's fine. That's life, isn't it?
You can't have it all. You can't have it all.
Yeah.
You can't have it all.
The thing is, if we were doing that, we'd be sitting there with, Vampiric Guard and Marathi, and sitting there at your 3-4 drops, and it would be same as 90% of the other lists.
I think in the mirror, this is particularly good because it just really fucks up. If you are against another Marathi, you could be in a position where you've got your general in against Marathi, and you're ignoring all her -1 rend because she lost a point of rend. What a twat. You've got the prayer that takes off 1 point of damage. She's not having a good day against this, and she's -1 to wound. Another reason I like the Phoenix is it's something that your opponent can't stop. They have to deal with it, and it's not like a spell that they can Teclis away, right? So yeah, I think in the mirror it's really good. What have you just got a dick pic, Rob? Where you're smiling after looking at your phone?
Pardon me?
You just got a dick pic sent to you?
Yeah. From Stephen. That's what. It's any message from him is of course a dick pic or message. Right. So the next. I'm actually just waiting on the delivery. Is actually what it is. Hey, really exciting news. For everyone from the Honest Wargamer Patreon, thanks for all the money you support the show with. Today I managed to get myself some very cheap food for the week and a couple of bins for the TSN Arena. That's right, watch out. Some truly awe-inspiring purchases coming my way. A couple of bins. Really, really thrilled to live the life that I'm living. Right, so next up, JP. JP, do you want to tell us what it's in your list, baby?
Yeah. All right. So, did we want to do this with the list bot?
Okay. Let's do Gary first then.
Yeah. Let's do Gary first.
Gary,
sure.
tell me about your list, brother.
Well, again, sounds Marathi Khaine, because that's too easy, low-hanging fruit. I've gone actually for something fairly similar to Darren, but in a different way. Rather than stodge, I've gone for more kind of avoiding the blows rather than just tanking the blows. So I've gone fully into the MSU, but with Keltnar, so the whole army has retreating charge.
Yeah, I love it.
So Keltnar, obviously, retreating charge across the board. You'll see a lot of things that are fairly similar to Darren's because I think they are just ubiquitously good. But we've got a Medusa. She's the only wizard, so she's got the Mind Razor. Again, same thing. I've only gone for the one because it's a tool rather than a game plan now. I've gone for Iron Scale, which is giving the snakes that you'll see later in the list, giving them the ability to run a lot and charge. So increasing threat ranges, meaning you can sit back out of range of people and then still dart in and do your thing. So again, avoiding the damage just by not being in range and not being there. The Iron Scale is the general, so she has to have the circling flock. So
that's great though, isn't it?
Which is another 5 bodies. Yeah, another leaning into the MSU, and your command ability is more MSU units. Awesome. She's got the kind of the artifacts that the Keltnar has to have. I honestly can't even remember what it does, but it's a small combat buff, and she's the main combat kind of orientated person in there. I think also Bloodwreck Medusa, has Shadowstone, so +1 to cast the Mind Razor as well while we're there. And then Morgwath the Blooded again, because why not? Even in Keltnar, she's the best hag that you can take.
She's a great ally at 80 points, isn't she?
Yeah, she's just ridiculous. For 80 points, you get your deck chair unit and a character. You know.
Yeah, but that 80 points could be a triumph.
The Mogweth has got the Cassius's Murder just to make things a little bit hittier as well. Try and combo that with Mind Razor, etc., etc., etc. Battle line, I've got 10 Blood Sisters, 10 Blood Sisters, 10 Blood Stalkers, and 10 Witch Elves. Just because you can make them battle line, because I've got an Iron Scale General. Why not? You've got some chaff there. The Witch Elves have bucklers because they work really well with the Keltnar command ability, which is bouncing mortal wounds. Bucklers bounce mortal wounds as well, so you can have this kind of 10-man chaff running around that suddenly just kills units just by getting smacked in the face. Like doubling up on the mortal wounds as you get hit. So they're kind of like an offensive screen, like a screen that you kind of almost want to die, and then you kind of, when they're dead and have taken a toll out with all these mortal wounds, you rush in and finish them off with 20 snakes or whatever. Let's say Blood Sisters and 2 loads of those. Again, they're just fairly decent, and they're much more decent now that you've got an ability to stop people piling in and circumnavigating their fairly poor 5-up save. Bloodstalkers, because Bloodstalkers, bit of range, it's a balanced list ultimately. You want some ranged threats to try and take out key pieces. And then we've got a Shadow Patrol with
one of my favourite battalions. This
it's really good. I mean, I think I was talking to James, one of the playtesters. He was like, "You'll never see it," and I was like, "Right, well, that obviously means I'm going to take it now then," because. And it's just got 2 loads of Heart Renders, 2 loads of Life Takers, and the 2. It's the minimum what you need to take. The 20 Canary and the 2 loads of 5 Doomfire Warlocks. But as it's written at the moment in the Shadow Patrol, they all get to teleport every turn.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is ridiculous.
It's great with the Life Takers, isn't it?
And it's what? Yeah, and the Heart Takers and the Heart Renders are getting buffs every time they redeploy.
Yeah.
So they're almost always getting all their buffs for just being in that battalion. And you've got this board control, which is ridiculous. Like, you can end up playing, super offensive alpha armies and deploy so far back behind screens, scenery, and all that kind of stuff to mitigate the alpha, and then still explode into the board almost with impunity. You've got 6 teleports. You've got a double run. Command ability with the Blood Sisters, so they can even kind of push up hard into the mid-board and still also potentially charge. There's the Blade Cove in there as well. The deck chair unit of choice, and the Elepax. So the Shark, just giving all those things like playing the MSU game, hitting edges of units, just 2.9ing it sometimes maybe in certain places. If you can, and just kind of keeping things in place and then bugging out when you need to, and just playing this objective. And again, if you want to, you can fully kind of commit into a bigger unit with everything, because you know that if you're doing it carefully and they're not piling in, you can go, well, I'll activate that. What are you doing? Not a lot. Right, cool. Now I'll activate that. Now I'll activate that. Now I'll activate that. Now I'll activate that.
It's like an always strikes last.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like an almost strikes last.
Well, you can put one snake in, can't you? Then a long line of them there. They can't pile in. One guy and all of those guys to attack. But you can do that on every side with every unit.
Yeah, and in fact, it's almost better than always strikes last in those situations because they have to use their activation.
Yeah.
Before you pile, and then you pile all your guys in, and you're like, okay, well, you've already gone.
Yeah, so you can gang up on these big units with your MSU, because the MSU downside is a lot of the time is you can't do that. You go in with one,
that's
you hit, you lose 2 or 3 units in the return swing. The other thing that I haven't seen talked about much is the Blood Sisters Crystal Touch ability. Is actually, I don't know if it's different because I wasn't a doc player before.
You can't stack attacks on it now. We used to be able to.
But what you can do is you can funnel all of them through one model. It used to be anything with it. Well, I believe it was. It used to be if you're in range of a model, that model gets to do a crystal touch. Now it's in range of the unit.
So it's like evocators now.
Yeah, so you can charge it to a unit, slap it all silly, do all your kind of attacks, all your buffs and everything. Make sure you're within 3 inches or an inch or whatever it is, of another unit, which may or may not have the ability to pile in. You might have shot it. You take off the original unit, and then you throw all the mortal wounds off to the left, off 90 degrees into something completely separate. Be that a buff piece, another unit, whatever. But only one of those snakes has to be in range, and then you can funnel all those 10 crystal touches through that.
Like the Stormcast chaps that.
Evocators. Or eels, similar thing. Yeah.
So it's very in line with those kind of things now. So again, you can, if you think you'll be able to kill said unit with 10 Blood Sisters, why not? There's not a medium-sized to small unit. You can just go right, cool, all the attacks into that 10-man unit, get it all. Oh, and that one snake is now within range of that wizard. Cool, 10 crystal touches.
I didn't realise that. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that is nice. And do you have to declare it? Do you have to declare it at the same time, or can you wait?
Can you wait? The end of combat. So it's after combat.
So even if you don't, if you're like, oh, I didn't quite do enough damage, or whatever, you can just put it all into the unit you originally wanted.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously that has the kind of small downside, which they get to attack back before they do that.
Sure. Yeah.
This army is trying not to do that. It's going to be kind of maintenance of aim. I want to kill that completely.
Yeah.
And then move on to the next thing because I've got more than enough chaff to sit in the way to stop any reprisals and
having the options strong, isn't it? Having the options strong. I love it.
Very good anti-deck chairs. You know what I mean? Like, because you can teleport so many units to concentrate your force, you can be like, okay, all right, this turn I had to spread out and hold my objectives, but in my next turn I'm going to be hitting your 5 direwolves with my 15 direwolves, and and you just have that mobility and those options that other factions might struggle with their backline holders. Like with Spiker trying to hold an objective from Gobapalooza, who's just going to fall over.
All the time you're giving your opponent things that they have to think about in the back of their head.
Yeah,
that's valuable. Here, there's loads to think about, and it's not only the more options you can give an opponent, the more chances they can make a mistake. The more things they don't see, the more chances they'll make a mistake, right?
I think especially with teleporting, right, where you just turn the game. I think maybe there's sometimes a little bit too much teleporting in the game, but you have your opponent spend so much time with the 9-inch sticks, that they can sort of forget. They're like, okay, well, I want to make sure I block everything off, and I don't want my general to get killed by, a bunch of warlock shooting or anything like that. And so they sort of, even without necessarily it being a mistake, they jeopardize their own game plan because they're worried about yours. And it's
you can't tag and run against this army. You can't just go, right, I've got this objective, this army, this turn, right, move off, and this unit of 300 point whatever is now going to play a part in the game.
It doesn't stop, right? It's not like you can kill the hero or anything like that. There's not a hero in the battalion, you're just you're not shutting down those teleports until you killed all the units in the battalion.
Exactly, so, and they're all perfectly adequate to kind of take on similar kind of deck.
Exactly, and you can concentrate. If you're like, oh, I've still got 3 of the units alive, and I need to make sure I kill this one hero. You can be like, okay, I'm taking all 3, rather than a lot of these other armies where you're teleporting. You're teleporting 1 unit, which probably means you're either teleporting 1 small unit you don't care about or 1 big unit you really do care about.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas this lets you not compromise.
Yeah, exactly, and it just means that you can deploy very
Mm-hmm.
conservatively, and kind of maybe again if they've got a high alpha potential.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can deploy defensively, knowing that you're not giving away board presence.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also like again in terms of those 9-inch sticks, if you're playing against something like KO, you can make your entire sort of geometry board plan with your bubbles and be like, yeah, there's nowhere you can land with fly high, and I've made these weird spirals and all this other stuff. And then in your turn, you can be like, but now I'm going to put them all where I want them.
Yeah, I like it.
The other small little thing, the small little tech, again, we were saying this all pre-FAQ, so it might change. But currently, the circling flock command ability lets you bring on another 5 canary, but it has no stipulation about when it has to happen.
Yeah.
So you can literally bring it down turn 5. So you can have the old kind of, by the way, you lose kind of, there's 5 on that objective.
Yeah. I think
what I do when that happens is I actually just go back and recount all the points from the match to see who actually re-won the match. That's my tactic.
Shots fired.
It's just a quick joke for a very select few, but is hilarious. Thanks, Jabs, for resubscribing. Big love to you. Appreciate it loads and loads. Thanks everyone for joining us live. I like the list. I think the list is cool. It's got loads of abilities. I love the teleports. I think it's fun. Makes me interested. Obviously, we've been talking a lot on the Monday show and the other shows that we're pretty certain AOS 3 is going to have that smaller board size. And how those teleports are going to be affected by that. It's 25% smaller, effectively 44 by 60, which is significant ultimately. Like JP was talking about those 9 inches. That doesn't mean that like it's dead in the water. That's not where I'm at. It's just maybe even that they'll be more vital, those teleports. They'll be especially on such small profiles that you see in the Life Takers, the Heart Renders, and the Doomfire Warlocks. Whereas the large teleports from big blocks of skinks or whatever you might have, that's harder to do ultimately. So I still think that teleports like this will be more relevant than other stuff in the future. So
I mean, I was messing about with a list that had 20 Blood Sisters in 1 unit, and it was in Calibron. It was fairly similar to this, but you had 20, and you were going for the Calibron kind of all or nothing kind of play with cogs and everything. And you're looking at it going, it's kind of cute, but it'll be like one of those. I'll crush 3 people day 1, and then I'll play 2 people that know what they're doing day 2, and it probably won't work because they'll just shut down shut down cogs. Or
hard to do that here. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, you can't do that with this because it's not kind of the game plan isn't getting a big unit. It's just board control.
If you compare it to the Stodge list or traditional Hagnar lists as well, they're probably a little easier to run. Whereas this is probably better, I would suggest, high end when you've got someone that really knows what they're doing. But someone that's probably new to the game would probably struggle.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, you've got a lot of, right? You sort of, when you've got MSU in general, sort of, you have less of just that. Okay, well, if I can get my big block of 38x unit into what my opponent doesn't want them to be, and they'll kill them. This is more like, okay, well, even when I want to kill something that's relatively easy for my list to kill, I need to be careful and do it correctly because it involves these multiple parts. And so
death by 1,000 cuts rather than,
exactly. And so it'll require
knowing how much to commit and where will come with experience and come with games.
And that's the cool thing about playing like lists like this, right? Is you play against an opponent. You're like, I've played this list a lot, so I've got good practice at using this MSU and making sure I'm committing the right amounts of value. But your opponent might look at it and be like, well, where do I put my block of 40 Mortec Guard? You're like, do I want 40 Mortec Guard to kill 10 Blood Sisters? You're like, I don't know. Not really. But what else am I doing with them? And so, like, your opponent finds himself in an unusual situation of trying to get value out of their sort of key pieces versus this small MSU list, and whereas you also have a difficult value game to play, but you've practiced it.
Yeah. And the list can actually chuck out quite a lot of mortal wounds, but it's not from any one point. So again, if you need to kind of kill one of those unkillable things, because you've got the mortal wounds to do it. You've got some coming from the Bloodstalkers. You've got some coming from the Blood Sisters. You've got
Medusa.
you've got Medusa, you've got Doomfire Warlocks with their spell. You know, you've got quite a lot of mortal wounds, but nothing kind of doing it in one go. So you have to kind of engineer situations where they're all doing it at the same time, but you need to either make sure that you do it, or they don't then suddenly leave their in the wind to be charged by that one unit. Because they all got too close and you didn't do the job. So you've got to kind of layer your
and I think
screens.
Definitely what Darren was saying is like you could easily, you know, I could pick up this list and just go to a game and just instantly lose and be like, wow, I did nothing. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, if you just slap it on the table and start running it around, you're like, well, my unit of 10 wasn't in range to be supported by, you know, whatever it needed support from, and now it's dead, and they're just moving on to my next units or in my board. So it'll definitely require finesse.
Yeah.
It's what I'm building at the moment, so whether it's good or not is another.
Well, I think a good thing about lists like that is whenever you finish a game, if you lose, you'll be like, I definitely could have done something differently. You know what I mean? Like you're like, I don't know what it was, but I could have. I had an infinite amount of options, so
options are good. I love options.
Yeah, so it's a good way. It's a good way to improve yourself as a player as well, because you're thinking about. You know, you're going to have these games where you're like, oh, even when you win, you're going to be like, I think I actually could have done this other thing where I went from this other angle or something like that. Whereas some list that you build, you can just sort of be like, well, after turn one, I was sort of pot committed to being in the middle with all my infantry, and I just kept rolling dice, and we found out who won in 2 turns.
Right, we've got wafflers on the show, so we probably need to start cracking on, don't we?
It's okay. No. Next up is JP's list. It's up on the screen now for you, JP.
Alrighty. So to avoid running into any duplicate issues with the better list builders than myself on this show, I just went for this Daughters of Value list where I pumped the numbers into ListBot. ListBot decides which units it thinks are most efficient. And
should we have a look at that first?
Yeah, just throw that. You can throw that up. So for people who don't know, the way ListBot basically comes up with these calculations is it takes a bunch of war scrolls, it breaks them down into their component parts, like their attack profiles, how many special rules they have, how fast they are, etc., and compares them to all the other war scrolls in the game and says, if I was making a guess, I would say this was worth however many points compared to its original points. And so I've done this for all the factions. This is for the new doc book. So in an ideal world, ListBot would just have a list filled with big Marathi only. That would be ListBot's favorite list, but unfortunately not allowed. So we can see here, like, you know, most of these lists, most of these units, ListBot thinks are high value units. I think that sort of fits in with Doc's, like, you know, how Doc has performed historically is just like, you know, they're good at fighting. They get a lot of their defensive ability from the allegiance abilities and stuff like that, but you know, it's good units.
But most importantly, like this is also based on the points that they're currently set at, right?
Yes.
And the overarching conversations which we haven't had in this show yet is, of course, that they are let's not say underpointed, but aggressively pointed and comparatively pointed a lot cheaper than a lot of, let's say, whatever the middle of the game is. And ListBot obviously points that out as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're always going to see, like, as the meta moves on, and we do see sort of, not even in a negative way, there is power creep in the game. You know, armies get stronger, they get more options. The average middle is often going to be behind these newer books. But yeah, so basically we run through these numbers, and basically I just went to basically took these, and I was like, okay, ListBot really likes these. You know, the Melusai Iron Scale is up there, but obviously you're not building a list around, you know, just that one hero, even though you're getting good value. So we're really trying to build a list out of Sisters of Slaughter, which come in here in the top, and then getting extra value out of sort of these supporting units, but really just trying to max out those sort of what the effective points. I think the list we're about to look at ends up at like what ListBot considers like 3,500 points worth of value or something like that. So do we want to swap over to the list? I guess unless Darren.
Already done.
Oh, perfect. So the list. I mean, there's not too much to talk about here. It's got your minimal supply of heroes that you need to support your Sisters of Slaughter, which is what you're building around your list around. So we've got the Hag Queen. You could easily swap in Morgweth for this. The reason I didn't is, one, because I have extra, in the original list, I had extra artifacts to use. And two is just I don't normally include those units in list block calculations because they're like, they aren't pointed in the same way, which is kind of why we were including them in those other lists, because Morgweth is really well pointed. So they don't really get included. But yeah, that could be a Morgweth. We got 2 Slaughter Queens because we're running double Slaughter Troop, and we've got a Blood Rack Medusa so that we have a Wizard and we have Mind Razor and we can cast our Endless Spell. And then the list we're building is just basically a double Slaughter Troop. So we just have loads of Sisters of Slaughter, just loads. And then those, like, you know, they're backed up by the Heartrenders, who also go in the Slaughter Troop. And really what it's what a list like this, and I've played a reasonable number of lists like this where all you do is you have a lot of pretty good units out on the table. And I think especially compared to the last 2 lists we're talking about, it does lack some of that, some of the power that you can get out of sort of being an expert with your own list. Is that, you know, you can't always leverage these like high synergies or these good combos, or okay, I got all my key pieces in the same place at the same time and really pulled this off. But the flip side of it is that you have a lot of stuff for your opponent to deal with. You know, it's sort of MSU, but where the S stands for strong rather than small. And so you're you know, you've got the little, you know, the deck chairs we've been talking about. You've got the Heartrenders, right? They can still give your opponent some headaches and stuff like that. But it is just one of those lists where your opponent can look at it and be like, how do I deal with 5 units of Sisters of Slaughter? You know, and it's in Draki Ganeth, which basically just gives them, you know, damage bonuses. So Sisters get a bonus if they charge, which they might not always be doing, but you can give them, you know, +1 to hit. You can basically buff them up. They get +1 bravery, which can be useful when, you know, you don't have enough Hag Queens to support to make all your sister blocks immune and stuff like that. But really, you know, I don't think this list is a top tier list, again, because when you give it to a top tier player, they can't necessarily get all the extra mileage out of it that they could by, you know, where they're like using that bubble with a Phoenix giving -1 to wound to a unit who's already got -1 to wound so that they can make a big swing. But it's just hard sometimes for your opponent to look at this on the table and be like, every objective has 20 Sisters of Slaughters on it, and I don't want to fight any of them, and I've got to spread out, you know, and so again, I also, if for anyone playing in real life where they actually have to build Sisters of Slaughter, I'm definitely not recommending this list. But I've played similar lists to this and things like Legion of Night, where you have a bunch of Grimgats, and it's sort of a fun list to play. And I think what I've learned often from playing it is like it's sort of a simple ABC type Age of Sigmar, where you're like, I've got units that can fight. I need to put them in the best place they can be on the board this turn so that they can fight the bad guys and win. And I think it's sort of a reasonable learning experience. You know, they don't. You know, you've got the 6-inch pylon, so you can sort of dictate in those combats. You know, you can sort of get in good situations. You get an always strikes first thing, which is sort of nice to counteract the fact that you've got so many multiple units without real that always strikes first. And they're going to put out a lot of damage. Again, not as much damage as you're going to see in those other lists where you do funnel buffs into one unit in this correct turn to really hit home at a key time. But yeah, it's just a list that your opponent walks up to and is like, oh, okay, can I, you know, some armies maybe they can, you know, if a block of Fire Slayers might be just, you know, too defensively tanky and not have enough surface area for you to really leverage this against it. But some armies you're just gonna kill them. You're just gonna be like, while they're fighting on this flank with their one good unit, you've still got 40 Sisters of Slaughter hitting them on the other side, and just killing things on the regs.
Sometimes keeping it simple is a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
You might have had
exactly.
You might, you know, something might be going on in your life. So just being able to walk up to a table, not having to think too much.
Yeah.
It's really fucking good.
Yeah, and it's a good way. You know, you get into the game. You know, you see Age of Sigmar again in a raw format. As Gary said, it's just that meat and potatoes. You're like, what does Age of Sigmar look like? And you're like, here it is.
Relaxing.
It's a bunch of combat. Yeah. So
it's sitting objectives or killing people sitting on objectives.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
When you boil it down, yeah.
Yeah. And this list, right? Daughters of Khaine are good at doing that. Good at doing that. You know, you got a little bit of piling, you got a little bit of deep strike / teleporting, and you got retreat and charge if you do need it. So yeah, it's there's not a lot to it, but if you're like, oh, I want to play Daughters of Khaine and I really like having loads of lady elves, you can do it, and that's a good list, and that's going to give people headaches when they try and fight all of them.
You know what it needs, though?
It's a lot.
Sharks. Is this really good?
Shark.
Yeah, I actually do. Again, maybe if I'd included the shark in the list button now, but shark is good. Yeah.
We have got 30 points spare, so you could drop in
I actually need those for a triumph, Rob.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So so as a kind of like a final conversation to ask you three, Daughters of Khaine as a book, how do you feel like it plays into the meta? Because obviously when Daughters of Khaine was first released, it was a very combat orientated meta. There was lots of fighting, and then we got like a year or so after we got the activation wars. We've got some like pretty competent shooting now in the game, but also sharks, which I know included in these lists, also a very competent anti-combat. So that already exists as well. So being integrated into the meta that exists now, but it seems getting a very cheap book. Do you think that they'll perform quite well in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's become less of personally, of the past year. Being good is less important than being interesting. And the thing, I like the book because I can do lots of different things with it. And what the meta kind of throws up, there's probably a list that I can make that kind of addresses it. So, yes, some of that is to do with the fact that it's quite cheap in places. But internally, it's all quite of a par. It's all quite internally balanced. Holistically, it's a really good book. So long as it never loses that, I think there's always going to be a list that you can make that will play into the meta that happens to be panning out at the time.
And Marathi, obviously.
Again, and Marathi, having a piece that doesn't die for 2 turns, guaranteed.
Two pieces right now.
Well, 2 pieces, yeah, exactly.
2 pieces, yeah.
It's always going to be really good unless it goes up in points.
Again, we haven't talked about it. We haven't talked about it because we don't have it on our list, but she's good against the shooting meta as well. And I think, again, one of the things shooting can sometimes struggle with is getting the bodies around where they need. And I think Daughters are decent with that because they do have these sort of relatively cheap blocks that can hold objectives and fight other people off objectives at the same time. And so, I think they're good. They got some good tools. I think, again, without having seen too many of the games, they're not going to like the games where they lose all their small heroes in turn 1. That's not that fun, and then the blocks can struggle a little bit more. Exactly. No one likes that. So I think there'll be games where you're like, oh, I wish I wasn't playing versus shooting, but I don't think it's a non-game like it can be for some. Like if you're playing Gristlegore versus shooting, you can sometimes just be like, well, there go my dragons. Like I don't have anything anymore. I don't think it's like that.
You'd be far surprised seeing a Daughters of Khaine army that's gone 4-0 and going into the last round, to try and win the tournament than you would be. You'd be far less than you would a Slaanesh army, right? You'd be really surprised if that.
The only problem is that it will go into the final round playing Croak, and it'll just be kind of like.
Yeah. How do you think the matchup is for Doc versus Seraphon?
Well, the same as everyone else. Fucked. No, not at all. It's probably got some game with Marathi. She'll get in there, won't she? And it's got the 6-inch pile-in mechanics, and they are tanky. And you've got Seraphon on many drops, so you do have an opportunity to get your buffs up and take the board, and then you can force the Seraphon to take you off them. And sometimes you'll roll loads of 5+s and you'll make your re-rolls, right? Sometimes that happen.
It's a good skink killing army, right? Because I think some armies are strong, but they don't necessarily have enough units to put 100 or 80 skinks into their little celestial grave at when they need to. Whereas something like Daughters, if you are getting into those skinks when they can't run away because you've used a 6-inch pile-in or something like that, then you're going to kill. Like the Daughters love that 25 millimeter versus 25 millimeter pile in, and if there's an army you want to evaporate a block of skinks, something like 20 witch elves will absolutely do it.
Yeah, I think
some of it also depends on
doing well, and doing well against Seraphon as well. If you had a top tier player and a top Seraphon guy versus a top tier Daughters of Khaine, I'd probably give it 60-40 to the Seraphon, which is actually
those are not bad odds, right?
that's pretty good compared to some other armies.
The other thing is, until the FAQ's out, there is actually a question mark over the damage prevention roll as well, because there's 2 different wordings in 2 different places in the book. One of them deals with mortal wounds and wounds.
Oh, yeah. So it might not apply to mortal wounds, which would be scarier.
So you have to check your pack to see if your CEO is allowing the DPR on mortal wounds as well.
I think it will do eventually. I think that'll end up as the fact, but we'll see.
What about you, Rob? Where do you put them?
They're really good. Super competitive, super cheap. They're competitive because they're cheap, but because there's a different conversations. But they're also like we talked about. There's a lot of variety in the book, and you can play the book in a load of ways. So unlike the Slash book, I know we keep beating it up, and that's unfair. But you could beat up the Sons of Behemoth book as well if you want. It's at least a book. It was written by the good guy, if that makes sense. So the guy that understands the game and plays the game. So you can play Drychikaneth, you can play Cobra Kai, you can play a bunch of different armies, so that's fun for you as a gamer. You at least have got a load of options, even if you're not looking to pure hardcore 5-0 it, and you just think, I want to run a load of snakes, I want to run these Doomfire Warlocks, whatever. It's a great book for that. It's got variety, it's got options, and it's got also unit roles as well, so many different unit roles. Shooty, fighty snakes, very different to different enough to Sister Slaughter. The avatars, they're different. Cauldrons, Marathi, incredibly unique. The prayers are cool. So it's just a great book, great army, and arguably it's that good because it's that cheap. If you just bump the price up, but it's like with Seraphon. If you bump the price up on Seraphon, they just are going to have less things to do. I know a lot of people think that you got to change the whole thing, maybe. But they'll just end up with less stuff. Probably a 20% bump on both armies would be a good start. And then you would still have books that can play and have options. They've got different unit roles. So great book, great play. It's got a great theme, so I'm really excited to see it on the tabletop ultimately. And lots of play in there as well, which is always really cool. Like you said, options that you have as opposed to options you take away from your opponent, which is why obviously I don't like the Sharks, I think is the best place for a game to be. I have lots of combat options. Army. Yeah, and it's a combat army, and people invariably like combat armies. So the more options I have to do things, and I like JP's point about Gary's list, is that you can walk away from Gary's game with that list, and win or lose, you could be actually there were loads of other things I could have done, and that's a fun way to play. I think ultimately,
absolutely.
Other people obviously just want to train track it. I do this thing. I've done the thing, and I'm going home. Oh, just find your vibe. Is all I can say. Yes, Collie Cochran in the chat. Oh, what a babe! I just want him to know that I'm going for tooth surgery in 2 weeks, so I love him loads. Right, okay. Well, thanks very much. You guys got any shout outs before we head out today? We'll go back. Gary, got any shout outs? Anyone you want to shout out today?
On the spot, I always watch the Wargamer Weekly with Vince. So if you don't know about them by now, why not go watch them on Wednesday night or Thursday morning, actually, in this country. But he tends to always have the opinions that I have, but yet he's always able to put them in a way that is less confrontational than mine.
No way, less confrontational than you, Gary.
I know.
Absolutely not.
I should, yeah. He says it in a way where he doesn't shout his mouth off. But
JP?
Yeah, I'll shout out Wargamer Online. They're a bunch of good guys who local to me and have helped keep me on the straight and narrow, staying in AOS even while we can't play on the tabletop. So check those guys out.
Darren,
I'd like to shout out Nico. I think I left him off the last show when I was saying thank you to everyone that's helped me out with the Halfling Tome, and I've written an entire rule set now for them, an entire tome, and he's edited it for me. And he's taken my stupid ideas and put them into GW wording. It's basically a lot of work, I think, for him, because my brain is full of fucking ideas, right? And lots of words and waffle. and he's condensed it down. He didn't have to do it. So just really, really fucking thank you for that, because it was a lot to do. I'm sure he didn't understand when he agreed to do it quite how much it was. But he's done it nonetheless. So I'd just like to shout him out and say thank you very much.
Oh, what a babe. All right, well, thank you to you three, that's my shout out today, for coming on the show. It's been a delight to listen to your guys' thoughts on Daughters of Khaine. Thanks to everyone for tuning in live. Join me and Adam Mumford tomorrow day. We'll be looking at all of the battalions in Age of Sigmar at the same time. Which is going to be super fun. And on Friday, for you Age of Sigmar fans, there is a list review show of the coverage of Age of Sigmar that we'll be doing over the weekend, which is the Battle of Copenhagen, which is an online TTS event. So that's going to be super fun as well. And for 40k Bros, we've got me, Nick, and Tom are live tomorrow night, so that's going to be super fun. And I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for everyone who listens to the show. Thank you for subscribing on Twitch or Patreon or listening to the podcast. You're all brilliant. Have a great day. Bye.